What do you think about the decision by certain sections of the opposition to boycott this election? And do you think it's enough reason to question the integrity of the vote?
Well, you have to understand the history of elections in Venezuela. The history of elections in Venezuela is such that the opposition in Venezuela has, and it's under instructions from the US, and they've wanted to actually cast aspersions about the vote itself. And that's why the majority of the opposition, and especially the radical opposition, that has used violence as one of its tactics to try and throw the elections into disarray, has not had the opportunity to do that this time around. And that's why we think it's important for them to not take instructions from the US, not take instructions from those that have actually instructed them not to be part of the process, but that they allow the process to take place and that there is a democratic process taking place in Venezuela.
Chris, it's interesting that you brought out that point because observer teams from organizations such as the African Union, CARICOM, and Arab League often monitor polls, but even if they deem them credible, once the European Union and US says otherwise, mainstream media organizations sort of parrot the verdict. Why do you think that is, and do you think it's acceptable in the 21st century?
I think the important thing is that we should be noting is that there are other imperialist countries that are trying to undermine the sovereignty and the independence of other nation states, and particularly with Venezuela, which has been under the throes of an illegal unilateral sanctions imposed by the European Union and the United States. This is part of the pressure that they're trying to put on Venezuela for it to leave the trajectory of the Bolivarian revolution and become an ordinary capitalist society. And these are the dictates of undemocratic societies. If you just look at what has happened in the US just recently, those elections themselves, Trump has questioned the counting, has questioned the electoral college in the US. And so we think the US and European nations that are saying these elections are not free and fair, are not honest to themselves because they have an agenda. And that agenda is to undermine the sovereignty and the independence of Venezuela.
Chris, thank you so much for joining us. I mean, it's a pleasure having you.